Welcome everyone to yet another Zensible webinar. Today we have Cupid, couples and counseling. Did you know that 1 in 3 urban Indian couples say they are going through significant relationship struggles? Did you also know that at least half of these people believe that mental health support could improve their relationships? In a country like India, where family and relationships are at the core of our social fabric, the demand for qualified relationship therapists is growing rapidly. And that's exactly why we are here today. This webinar is designed for any practicing or aspiring therapists who want to dive into the world of relationship therapy. And who better to guide us than Neha Varma? With extensive experience in relationship therapy, Neha specializes in a client-centric, humanistic approach that helps couples navigate challenges and build stronger emotional connections. Thank you for being here with us, Neha.
Thank you for having me. That's a warm welcome.
And obviously, hosting this session is me, Veda from Zensible. Just so you know, Zensible not only conducts free webinars like this, but also offers digital tools for therapists that help them make therapy more effective. If you are a master student, you can access these solutions for free. So to learn more, visit zensible.in. Do keep messaging in the chat window. We like a very good conversation going on the side. And also keep posting any questions you may have. We will pick them up in the last 15 minutes of the session. And stick around till the very end. We'll be sharing Neha's contact information for those who are interested in learning more from her. So let's start with the basics, Neha. The first thing to understand in relationship is there are so many clients who do not know the difference between infatuation, love, and attachment. So when a client comes to you with relationship struggles, how do you guide or help your clients understand what is the difference between these three? And do age of the client matter at all when it comes to clearly identifying these differences? Neha, are you there?
Network issue going on from my end. Can you
Not a
please
problem.
repeat the question? Yeah.
Not a problem. I am so happy to repeat the question because it's such an important question. What I was asking was when clients come to you, how do you help them differentiate between infatuation, love, and attachment? And do age of the client make a difference in helping them identifying these differences, or do they already know about it depending on their age?
Yeah. I think to answer your question, we can begin with understanding what infatuation and love is. To clarify, infatuation is a sudden rush of attraction, that often fades away quickly over time. Whereas love is a very deep emotional connection that requires a lot of effort, consistency. Unlike infatuation, love strengthens and deepens over time. I think teenagers often confuse infatuation with love. Let's consider today's generation, Gen Z. Gen Z relationships are often labeled with new terms like benching, where someone strings another person along without committing. And there is other thing like situationships, where there are emotional closeness available or present in the relationship, but there is no clear relationship status. I think this shows that the concept of love isn't very clear here in the new terms that have been developing. There are multiple theories of love in psychology. If you will specifically ask me what how do you define love, I think it is very subjective in nature, including the triangulation theory of love, which describes love as combination of intimacy, passion, and commitment. It actually requires a lot of effort and consistency throughout which comes with age and maturity as we travel along. Even in the phases of love, you will have to travel for several, a lot of time to understand where we stand, whether it is a mere attraction or it is a love that, involves a lot of emotions and feelings. Now, talking about attachment, I think attachment is something that is formed in early formative years of our childhood that will shape and connect us with others in the adulthood. Uh, so there are a lot of attachment styles, and but I will narrow it down to few of them, like secure, anxious, avoidant, and disorganized or fearful. Someone with anxious attachment style might cling to their partners, always seeking reassurance. On the other hand, avoidant individuals tend to pull away during conflicts, feeling overwhelmed by the closeness. But as a therapist, how do I suggest them taking individuals? How do I suggest them to go for individual sessions initially? Is like, I'll when they are seeking couple therapy, I'll ask them to first attend individual sessions before having couple session, because hearing out them alone is quite important to understand them before understanding the entire relationship. So after this, I think I'll encourage them to guide and recognize what their attachment style is. So when they in this process, they'll be self-reflecting about themselves. So reflecting about themselves will make them understand where they stand in their attachment style, or how the relationship they are having with their close ones is, whether in infatuation or love. Are they looking for something, something that they want? Network fluctuations from my end.
Mhm.
So I think I've been explaining on how, as a therapist, I'll start individual sessions and help them practice self-compassion.
Mhm.
So I encourage them to practice self-compassion. So because I believe before we build a healthy relationship with others, I think we first need to nurture a strong and compassionate bond with ourselves. So once we understand where we are or how we are actually, will be able to develop ourselves, I think it is easier for us to invest in others relationship, like our relationship with others. I think once we attain this, in the end, we can involve lot of techniques here, but the basic one we can try is like, journal and reflect how the relationships are, how a safe and secure relationships can be it infatuation, love, or attachment. I think we can build it health. We can build healthier or more fulfilling relationship based on the emotional connection rather than the fleeting attraction we do find. At, yeah, I think this answers your question.
Yes, it does. Thank you so much, Neha. I just have a quick thing. You mentioned about attachment styles, right? Um, eh, so when is it when two people who have completely different attachment styles, like one is secure and another is anxious, so do they give rise to any sort of relationship concerns? Do the attachment style incompatibility can give rise to relationship concerns?
Yes, definitely. If we'll definitely talk about this attachment issues and the relationship between them, if you look at the attachment style as one, if we're talking about avoidance style, if the partner who is having a avoidant attachment style, I think when there is a conflict, they try to take some time for themselves and want to go away from the relationship for a while and take their space and come back. But for the other partner, it looks like it is something, if the other partner is of anxious attachment style, they tend to feel that this partner is avoiding. So being clingy is their thing and avoiding is the other person's thing. So during this entire situation, it develops into something different, and the conflicts actually multiplies rather than understanding each other. I think better communication patterns and setting boundaries and understanding oneself will make us, a better person in the relationship if both of them are having the same kind of issue or different issues per se.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. So, when you said about Gen Z terms, right? You said benching and something else. I am not a Gen Z, unfortunately. So these
Yeah.
terms are new to me. And incidentally, even the term love language was completely new to me until very recently. So I was so surprised when they said, "Oh my God, do you not know your love language?" I'm like, should I know about this? How important is love language in a relationship, and how important is love language in a couples therapy kind of a situation?
You see, this is a very wonderful question. Love languages actually have become, very mainstream, like you mentioned. While they offer valuable insights, they should also be seen as a process of trial and error rather than, fixed formula. It's important to approach them as an experimental tool because if you're allowing couples to explore how they receive love differently, that is a very crucial part, because often we tend to express love in the way we want to receive it rather than the way our partner truly needs. Love languages actually have become widely recognized these days. I think I can give a great example of this Tamil movie, uh, Iruga Patra, if I'm not pronouncing it wrong. There, the therapist
It's
actually
called,
explains them.
yeah, you are right. It's called irigapatru. It means
Iruga
holding
Patra, yeah.
tightly. Yeah, that's what it means, holding tightly.
Correct, correct. If a lot of people might have watched the film already, where the therapist explains them beautifully. It's a concept that gained a lot of popularity, especially among younger generations. If you come across the movie, you have the idea about those, but I'll break it down simply into five love languages. I think people will have a lot of love languages according to their needs and their intentions towards the love, but I will just narrow it down. Quality time, words of affirmation, physical touch, acts of service, and receiving gifts. These are the five, main love languages. While these provide the helpful framework, they don't fully define a relationship. I think, as I mentioned in my first answer, also the first question you asked, also, love is much more complex and requires deeper emotional understanding beyond, just knowing someone's preferred love language. But I wouldn't say it is completely not useful. Uh, I'll just share an example from my recent experience. I was working with a couple, and it perfectly illustrates the entire thing here. When they actually first started dating, the man assumed his partner, who carried herself in a very classy and elegant way, would enjoy only fancy dates and extravagant gifts. So he saved up a lot to show a lot of efforts from his end. So he took her on an expensive date and bought her a lot of gifts, thinking that she'll be very happy. But after a while, he came to me and he started telling me that his wife did not actually seem to be very interested or enthusiastic in that entire process. While she actually appreciated his efforts, but she felt out of the place because she wasn't expecting something so extravagant. Over the time, they discovered, what truly makes her happy is something much more simpler, like just going and grabbing an ice cream or enjoying street food together. So it takes a lot of time to understand that what are the different love languages for different people, and adjusting to those love languages will bring them closer with time. That's why I always encourage couples to approach love languages with curiosity. If we have rigid expectations, I think we would not be able to understand each other's love language. So if we are looking at it with curiosity rather than rigid expectation, it will turn into a very good thing. So we'll have to just look at it as a tool but not a solution. So for healthy relationships, I will definitely say, understanding how to receive and give love is quite important.
Yeah, so what you're saying makes sense. And what I also think is that more than, yes, understanding love language is really, really good. But as with attachment styles also, and as with love languages also, even if you are not aware of these terms, communicating with your partner in the right way is more important. In the example that you said, the partner was giving expensive gifts, and if the wife had told out, uh, uh, aloud, like, I'm not very, I thank you for giving me this expensive gift, but I would rather go out and have golgappa, right? Then it would have made it much more simpler, right? So when couples come and you know that communication is the most important issue rather than their styles of attachment or love language, how do you promote that? How do you open that up?
Yeah, so you see, there are a lot of mistakes that keeps happening while we observe communication between couples. One of the biggest communication mistakes couple make is not really listening to each other. A lot of times, what happens is like we are just wanting for our turn to talk rather than actually hearing what the other person is saying. And when emotions are high, it is easy we get defensive or bring up past conflicts, but when we do that, we pull the past issues into the present, and it makes really harder for a partner to feel safe in the conversation. That's why it is important we stay in the topic at hand rather than digging up the past. Uh, another key part of healthy communication is like, understanding a partner's communication patterns. You see, if instead of saying you always do this or you never listen, if we try shifting that to I feel, or from my perspective, the small changes can make a huge difference because it keeps the conversation open, rather than putting the person on a defensive tone. Even shifting from mine or yours, if we talk about things like ours, quote unquote, we, I think we can help create a stronger sense of connection and teamwork in relationship. When partners start using more inclusive language, they naturally appreciate each other. Misinterpreting silence is another big common issue I often find in the couples. If one person might withdraw to the process, the process of expressing the emotions, like I told you in the beginning, it is seen as an avoidance or the rejection to the other person. So being assertive is very important, and asking questions again in written is also very important. Like, hey, I noticed you're quiet, do you need your space, or would you like to talk about it? I think this simple check-ins can clear up so much. On the other hand, that person also, help them understanding how can they communicate back. This gives the, validation, core validations to the other person's feeling. If you always, that doesn't mean you'll always have to agree with your partner, but making sure they feel heard or understood is the key of communication. It is not just about talking, it's also making the other person feel safe, open, and honest.
Mm. Yeah, that is true. I mean, we've been talking a lot about communication and love languages. It's all about talking, but also there is this part about the not talking as well, right? Sometimes a person needs their boundaries. Like, for example, I am always the talkative one. You can tell I cannot stop talking. But my partner, he needs his quiet time. So he needs his time where he is doing things on his own, and it took us a long time to figure that out. So where is the balance between that boundary? That is, this is me time, and this is my things. This is my boundary. Some people have a lot more boundaries, but at the same time, the other person might feel like, oh, why are there boundaries when we are supposed to be so close? So this misunderstanding is also sometimes cause for, I want to be close to you, but you want to be away from me. How do you match that up?
Yeah, true, true. What you said is actually true. Finding the right balance between personal space and togetherness can be tricky because when we set boundaries, a partner might think like we are trying to control them or make them see things our way. It can sometimes come off mean or harsh also. Even if it is not our intention to be like that, but we come off mean or harsh. That's why normalizing boundary settings is important. It's not only about shutting someone out or, asking them to not be in our life. It is about creating a healthier relationship. I always encourage clients to develop relationships, uh, like friends or going out with colleagues or having some me time. If you're not interested in meeting other people, also having a me time is very important, because dividing our time in that way will help us do a lot of things. One way to do this is through like soft communication. Instead of doing a harsh communication or hard way, let's imagine if a student who needs a recommendation letter from a teacher or a supervisor, they wouldn't just go and demand it. They instead, approach the teacher politely, explain why they need it, or they express the gratitude. This is a simple example of soft communication. Making a request in a way that is respectful and considerate. In relationships, you need to follow the same principle. If you apply the same principle, instead of saying you never give me space, you could say I really value our time, or I need some quiet moments to recharge. How do you feel about that? Or using any sort of positive questioning here. This kind of approach will make the conversation to feel safe or confident. Confront, it doesn't look like someone is confronting. On the other hand, if your communication is harsh, especially when mixed with sarcasm, you can push partners away through this, saying like, oh, I think I'll just disappear so you can finally have your space. This might feel like you're expressing frustration instead of explaining what you are actually feeling. Now, this builds resentment instead of solving that issue at that moment. If you shift that to softer tone or openly speak about it, you will create a space. I think one important step I include when couples come with this sort of issues, I'll make them understand they have different needs. If psychoeducation is not helping, I will introduce Gottman's checklist. Gottman checklist, I'll give hand it over to both of the partners. If it is it has 20 questions asking them to rate their needs on scale from 1 to 5. After filling, I'll just ask them to exchange their answers. This helps them to see what feels like 5 to one person might not feel like 5 to the other person. Instead, it's like 3 to their partner. Some areas might match while others just highlight the difference between both of them. Then I introduce them to the repair checklist. If I encourage them to go on a date or spend time together and have a conversation about what they discovered through the checklist, over time, this helps them to see that the needs of each other, aren't just right or wrong, they are just different. So it shouldn't, in the end, boundaries shouldn't look like it you're controlling someone. They are about respecting each other's boundary. So communicating or helping them to communicate in a good, better way will make everything considerate and clear, and it will build to have a better relationship.
That is a great explanation about boundaries. Thank you, Neha. You mentioned about Gottman's checklist. So after the session, if you can just give us a link, I will include that and send it over to all the participants so that they will be able to take a look at it themselves. So
Definitely.
you at the beginning, you mentioned about attachment styles, and I had a follow-up question on that. So the attachment style, it keeps on getting reformed based on your other relationships as well, right? Not only your romantic relationships or your present relationships. It may also be based on your past relationships that are not even romantic, like the ones that you had with your parents, the ones that you had with your siblings, the ones that you had with your close friends. They all matter for your current relationship. So, in therapy, how do you bring that out, the impact of past relationships on the present relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. See, what we are today is what our past shapes us into. I think even Freud said that. But if
Mm-hmm.
you'll ask me whether attachment styles or personality are they static or dynamic? That is a whole debate. But some people believe they're fixed, but other believe they can change. Personally, I think you can develop and evolve if you look at your attachment styles. We've already spoken about it, right? There are four attachment styles and how they are formed. But when you deeply look at the topic, what actually shapes them, it's not only our romantic relationships, like you said. It's our entire history, our family dynamics, childhood experiences, friendships, past relationship, everything plays a role here. Let's begin with the family only. If we grew up in a household where emotions weren't openly discussed, they might struggle with vulnerability in their romantic relationship. Even if they want to open up, it feels, very unnatural for them because they never had a space before where they can open up or talk to each other. If they have strict caregivers who always shut down them during the conversation instead of encouraging them, they might even develop an avoidant attachment style. So they learn expressing emotions isn't just safe. So as adults, they just pull away emotionally, or they are so secure. That's how they become clingy to their partners. But it's not only, confined to parents. If we see, siblings and peers also shape us. If you are growing up as a single child, or if you're going growing up with a sibling who constantly overshadowed you, then it your feelings often feel you always feel like you were unheard, and that might develop a habit of suppressing our emotions or our own needs. So we tend to carry all those into our romantic relationships, where you always have to prove your worth, otherwise you feel anxious and you constantly seek validation from your partner. And if you're not getting that, it is quite difficult for us. Also, if we consider past romantic relationships with one person to other person, they differ. But if someone was in a relationship where they were cheated or emotionally got neglected, this can reinforce the whole attachment wounds they were having from the very beginning. So, a secure person might develop trust issues, but someone with attachments, already having an anxious attachment style, may become even fearful or abandoned because of this relationship. But on the other hand, if they're having a positive relationship, one with that healthy communication or emotional safety that they never had, they can shift towards a secure attachment style. If you'll ask me, I think attachment styles are not permanent, but they are patterns we learn, and just like anything else we learn, we can unlearn. But self-awareness, healthy relationship experiences, and understanding what sort of attachment we are in, that this will actually help us move towards a more secure way of connecting. So yeah, past influences us into what we are today, but it doesn't define us to be the same person forever.
It changes and evolves over time.
Yeah,
Oh,
correct.
one thing that you said really resonated with me, and it links back to what we were talking about before we started the webinar, which was if a person grew up in a household where talking about emotions were not normal, then they are not used to it. They are closed off, and it takes time to bring that out, right? In a country like India, where talking, forget about emotions, when talking about sex is so taboo that they don't want to talk about it, and that intimacy is so important in relationships. Um, do you talk about all of these as part of couples therapy, Neha? Do you get into the intimacy side of things as well?
Yes, definitely. If we are considering intimacy alone as an aspect, I think like every other need we have in relationship, intimacy also plays a lot, a bigger part here. When we are communicating with a partner, it is not just in words. There emotional intimacy that is connected. There is also physical intimacy which is involved in here. So if you're physically connecting to the other partner, you need to be satisfied in every aspect of your life. Let's say you're doing really great emotionally, and if you're really doing well, but you're not able to connect with your partner physically, that creates a lot of tension between both of them. Or most of the times, not being sexually sex education, uh, with respect to sex education in India, like you said, this is something still a taboo. Still a lot of people think that talking about itself is insensitive. So it is a very sensitive topic, and everyone should learn about these things, because sometimes what we are doing in relationship might not be the same thing for the other person. So talking about your intimate relationship and making them understand, there are a lot of checklists even for understanding this. But if there are any issues pertaining specifically to intimacy, I think that's where we can shift the whole concentration to a sex therapist instead of couple therapist. But talking about it is very crucial in relationships.
Yeah, yeah, true. See, I have been telling people about this. I don't know if it will ever become true or not, right? Is that when two people marry, okay, whether they have been, going out for a while, or whether it is, completely arranged marriage, when they marry, there is so much to unpack with emotional intimacy, physical intimacy, communication styles. What I tell people is, why not proactively go for therapy? You don't have to go for like, multiple sessions. Go for one or two sessions of therapy before or right after you get married, so that you unpack all of this. You open those sort of communication with a knowledgeable third person, and then you embark on your journey. What would such a situation be like? How would relationship evolve when we do it with that sort of support, Neha? What do you think?
That's actually a very lovely question. As you said, yes, most of the couples don't go to counseling until things are falling apart. If you'll ask me, a lot of couples who come to me will come to therapy when they're on the verge of divorce or things are falling apart completely. But you see, by the point they're quite exhausted. At this point, they're quite exhausted, they're frustrated, and they're not very sure whether to figure it out or lose the relationship. But you see, if you start seeing it, you will understand that you will know, if you're just keeping on waiting before solving the problem or solving the issue, it is actually multiplying, and it is becoming much more severe. Even in certain cases, you cannot even handle it anymore. So proactive counseling before a relationship even begins, when it begins early, it can actually prevent so many issues down the road. Think about that, when we plan about a career, or we prepare, or just simply meal prepping for the entire week, it takes a thought, and we plan, and we come into the action. The plan of action is very meticulously written. But when we talk about relationships, many people assume relationships just should go and fall into place naturally. But that if it is not meant to be that way, it will not work out. It will not work out itself. So sure, some relationships can flow easily. I wouldn't say that all relationships are going to be tough, but many struggle simply because no one ever teaches us how to communicate, how to handle conflicts, how to understand our own emotions, or even recognize what sort of attachment style we are carrying. All these things were never taught to us, yet we have a huge impact on our relationships. So one of the best part about early counseling is that helps couples understand themselves better. And if you look at it, from all my previous questions you've asked also, they point back to the same thing, self awareness. When you know yourself, your patterns, how to express love, I think you will understand what are the triggers you actually have. How can you navigate this relationship further, and what are your intentions in the relationship? So instead of falling into the ocean and desperately trying to find your way, you can learn to swim first, and step by step, with those tools, you can build something strong before the everything floods into your way and takes it over. I'll also tell couples, because the strongest relationships are not one without problems. They are the ones with patterns don't know how to navigate their emotions together. So it is completely normal if you feel sad, angry, frustrated in a relationship. Not everyone is happy. So instead of waiting until things are falling apart, you can learn it together, start it together, practice it early, and be consistent and fluent, and it becomes natural with time.
Yeah, yeah, that is true. So there is a question from the audience. For others who are there in the audience, feel free to drop your question. This was something I was going to ask you, and I thought we'll start early. Let's say you mentioned something before that sometimes you ask clients to come for individual therapy so that they open up before they start couples therapy, right? So how do you maintain neutrality when you have had individual therapy with one client and they then come for couples therapy?
Yeah. So maintaining neutrality in couple therapy is quite crucial, especially when one partner seems more at fault in a relationship struggles. Like I mentioned before, we always start individual therapy sessions first. I specifically do that. This helped me understand the mindset and personality and their attachment issues, what they're actually carrying in this relationship. Once I get the clarity, I encourage couple sessions because listening to each other is just as important as being heard. So, maintaining the neutrality in couple therapy, if both partners are sitting in front of me, I often see the thin line where one might be more at a fault. But if I just point out directly, they are likely to get defensive. Instead of, I focusing on how to help them reflect on themselves or their own behavior, it'll turn out to be something like, trigger them. So they'll become more self aware and they feel like they do not want to continue therapy. So, validating both partners and their experiences is key here. Even if one person seems to be more at fault, their actions are usually rooted in deeper emotions, past experiences, or misunderstandings. Or instead of, labeling their actions as right or wrong, I help them to see them that both are contributing to the situation. And the choice of words I use matters a lot here. If I come across as blaming, it can feel like I'm escalating the conflict rather than resolving it. So I once had this client who was very hesitant to come to the therapy in the past. In the past, when I had him, it's because when he was seeing therapist, other therapists, they always seem to take other partner's side. So it is because maybe the other partner is at more fault than the other one, but the experience made him feel like he was unheard, and then later on he was unwilling to try counseling again. So that is why exactly neutrality is non-negotiable here. A therapist role is always that you'll have to guide, not judge, and ensure that both partners feel safe enough in engaging process any engaging processes they are having together. So words I choose matter. If I say you are the reason this is happening, therapy loses its entire purpose there. So instead I approach it in a way that helps them to recognize what patterns they have and how are they feeling, instead of making them feel I'm taking sides. That is what actually keeps the process fair and helps them to move forward.
Mm. That is a really good answer about how to maintain the neutrality and how to validate what is going on behind the scenes. But Neha, have you ever encountered a situation where a couple come for therapy, but in reality, if they say that they want to work on it, but in reality, one of the partner is emotionally, verbally, or physically abusive, and you know that it's not a thin line of one person being more at fault. It's like well over the line, and there is abuse involved, right? How do you maintain neutrality, or how do you handle that situation?
This actually is a very sensitive situation. When couples come in show signs of emotional or physical abuse, the first priority should always be about their safety. There are situations where couple therapy is not appropriate, especially in cases what called, you know, if there is any violence involved. This type of domestic violence will usually have a perpetrator and a clear victim. One partner consistently dominates and instills fear in the other person and takes no responsibility for doing that. So they often blame the victim and show no remorse. So in such cases, couple therapy is not just an option. So the priority is safety, planning safety for the victim and individual therapy for both partners if they are willing to take it. So, however, outside the situations, couple therapy can be incredibly useful addressing all these issues, be it power imbalances or helping partners build healthier dynamics. But considering relationships, before even considering the relationship, it is very crucial we assess whether one partner is in danger. If the signs of physical abuse or couple therapy is not appropriate, it needs to shift in to individual therapy. So, for let's say if there is any emotional abuse or power imbalances, I take a different approach. I ask questions to understand how they are aware about the partners, what are the relationship dynamics they have. So, if often the person who is actually experiencing it doesn't even realize that they are in unhealthy or unsafe situations, be it toxic, manipulative, or controlling behaviors. They think that partner, they are just caught in that same loop or constant conflict. But in reality, you can see that they are dominated by one person. So recognizing them is important. So according to me, when if the focus on how the victim responds to the abuse is addressed, then the abuse itself, that will be a mistake, because manipulative abusers can highly be charming and persuasive. They even sometimes convince therapists that they are the real victims. So that's why it is very important therapists stay vigilant, look beyond the surface level interactions, and understand the true power dynamics. So here comes very important aspect, like considering the legal and ethical side of the therapeutic approach. So if you suspect harm or damage, it is your responsibility. You should take these steps and ensure safety first. So it if even if it have to connect, even if from your end, if you'll have to connect them to a person like crisis centers or legal support or any other resources as such, I think it's important we get everything written and informed consent. And consent is very critical. Clients need to understand their actions, and we need to also protect our and them, their entire therapy room there. So if we are not acting rightly, victim is always going to remain in risk.
So that is such a very delicate balance of ethicality, right? You know that they are in an abusive relationship, and you said that get consent, and then connect them with the crisis center. But if the person who is the victim is not willing to accept that they are, sometimes that happens in relationship, they do not want to see that they are actually in a very toxic relationship, and they don't want to give consent, but you know that it's not a good relationship. How do you balance that, especially if there is, let's say, a risk of permanent damage? How do you balance that, Neha?
I think when there is risk of permanent damage in such situations, we just do not have to, think about staying in the therapeutic setting only. Because once you notice that it is out of your hand, we do not have power to control the situation. And like I told you, outside the therapy settings, we never know. The victim is always going to be in the risk. So victim is always going to be in the risk, and you end up seeing that person is suffering. So that is where legally and ethically it is important we escalate this to other resources, escalate them to crisis help, or if there are multiple other things, helplines out there which are actually concerned with regards to domestic violence or any abuse specifically. If you're talking about emotional abuse, I think emotional abuse is also something that is rooted from our past experiences on how we develop as a person or on how we grew up to be this person. That sort of situations, if they are in our controlled range, we are talking to the person, we are helping them communicate, we are helping them setting boundaries. We are actually able to do it. But if informed consent is so crucial that if no one is willing to get into it or want to sign it, I think escalating it or terminating the session is better than continuing there.
Okay. Do you bring in other people like family or extended family into the picture, or do you recommend bringing in others? This is the last really serious question because I think we have ventured into some really dark territory, but do you bring in family into it?
Most of the times, I think when we are dealing with couples, especially both of them, couple A and B, let's talk about A and B. A couple might be interested only talking about themselves and not involving any others. But you see other set of couple, B couple, where when they are fighting or there is any conflict, they want their parents to involve, their friends to involve. I think that approach is not healthy, because if two couple are acting differently, you can already see the difference. The one who is not involving other people have a better chance of connecting, because no third perspective. If I am a therapist, I think being a therapist, you will have a look at that relationship. You are unbiased here. You do not go with a mindset where my son is right, or my we do not have any relationship with the client. But when you involve other people, they are definitely going to be biased. So until and unless it is very critical that you do not understand or you cannot rely on both partners, if you're involving the family member or extended person, it is safe to go. But until and unless there is no such scenario, I think it is very important you only talk to both of them, maybe separately or together, and understand what are their needs and work according to that. I personally will always suggest that is the way we have to go ahead.
Okay, yeah, okay. So one more thing is, one of my friends, she said this to me that she had a couple come to therapy, and they came with the intention of getting divorced. They came with the intention that they want to separate, right? So, have you had any sort of situation like that? How do you deal with people who come to therapy with the pre-existing notion that they want to separate?
Yeah, as a therapist, it is very important. Our aim should not be about separating the couple. Our aim should be about Am I audible?
Okay. Yes, you are. That's okay. You were talking about couples who come with the intention of separating, and you were talking about that.
Yeah, so like I told you, if the couple's already coming with intention of separation, I think as a therapist, we have no right to guide them towards one. You never say them, yeah, you should get divorced or you should stay in the relationship. Our main aim here should be guiding them or showing them the path on how they can choose what they want. So if they are already coming with a thought, I think the better way to deal with it is like, you can just talk to them, do some Socratic questioning, and make them realize what exactly they need. You see, a lot of times a couple, one wants to get off the relationship and want to get divorced, but the other doesn't want to get. but they often feel very difficult to communicate the same thing to the other person. So in such cases, if you're doing some questioning, ask them open-ended questions, write few things about what you love in yourself, love in your partner, or talk about what is that one thing that was keeping you in the relationship even today. So when we do such kind of things, it will make them realize what they want. I think that can shift the path. So always sticking to both reasons is correct. Both of them is correct. Whether to stay in relationship or to get off the relationship, we'll have to leave it to the person. But if they're coming with one sort of mindset, they're asking them to go in a right path is our duty, and questioning actually helps here.
Okay, okay. Thanks, Neha. There are more questions from the audience. This one is really interesting. It asks, are men usually invested in therapy, especially avoidant men? How do you deal with situations where either one of the individuals aren't cooperative in therapy? So, without generalizing, right? Do you feel that one gender is more receptive to therapy in couples counseling and the other is not, Neha?
Yes, I think this is a very interesting question, actually. You see, if we look at it in gender wise, females are emotional beings. They tend to talk about what they feel, talk about it, or get emotional support. Whereas men are practical beings. If they think that this certain thing is happening in life, it is happening because of this has a purpose, and the purpose need to be fulfilled. So if men are actually avoidant, I think it is very evident that they isolate themselves too much, and they do not deal with situations, and they just run away. I think if females who are avoidant also, they are going to do the same. But if you'll ask me, it is equally proportionate. The proportion is very equal. Both of them can be avoidant, both of them can be anxious, or either of them can be different way. But dealing with this situation, how do we bring them to therapy? I think we cannot force anyone to come into therapy. It's a way. I think if we'll talk to one of the partner, like in this situation, one is very interested in the therapy, so continue therapy with that person. Maybe explain them or psychoeducate them about the other partner, so they will understand the situation and act accordingly. That might take them or bring them interest in the therapy here.
Okay, that makes sense. So you continue with one person who's still interested in that, and then give them the tools that they can take back to the relationship. There are two questions that are very similar, so I'm going to ask them both together. The anxious avoidant relationship is very common. How would healing look like for them? And the next one is also pretty similar. What techniques would you suggest to improve the dynamics between couples having anxious and avoidant attachment? So the question is both about the process of therapy and the final healing of the relationship. Can you help us maybe with the example, Neha?
Yeah, like from the very beginning, I was talking about understanding or being self-aware about what sort of attachment style we carry is quite important here. So, if you'll ask me any therapeutic technique or style I use here, we can use n number of them. It depends on what approach you come from. Let's say I am coming from a humanistic approach. For me, validating and acknowledging a person's issue is the key. So, validation and acknowledgement doesn't happen very easily if the partner is an anxious person. The same thing happens in the avoidant partner also. That is the reason I'm pointing out this again. Taking individual therapy sessions is important before going into couple therapy. So if you talk to one person, help them recognize their attachment style, help them, self guide them that they are not guilty, that it's fine to act in certain way, but showing them, rerouting them to the better ways. I think you can ask them to journal, CBT. DBT is very useful here because you talk to them and you explain the emotional aspect of the entire thing. And there are much more therapeutic techniques that are you know in action right now and are still under research. It takes a lot of time, if we talk about it, because it is a huge aspect in entire way. But you see, when you talk about the healing aspect, both anxious and avoidant people, it is too hard for them to make them feel understood. If you're let's say you are a one person. I had a client who's been taking therapy for an entire year now. In the very beginning, she's quite anxious in nature. Her attachment style is very anxious. Even with the close ones are not talking to her properly, she becomes very insecure and ends up having anxiety attacks. Yeah. So for her to understand what therapy exactly took a lot of time. So making them understand and creating a secure, safe space needs time. So therapy can look longer. Therapy is a slow process. It takes time. So being patient and making them understand and feeling validated and acknowledging their problem is key here.
Okay, that makes sense. So, thank you, Neha. When you have them as separate, when you have the individual therapy with the anxious avoidant styles, do you give some sort of technique so that they understand the attachment style of other, and do you give any communication changes that you encourage them to do, so that when they realize that this is what they are doing as part of the relationship, they know that, okay, I see what I'm doing, and you give them techniques that can adapt them to, people don't change completely, but how they manage the situation is what is more important, right? So do you give them any sort of worksheets or techniques to understand that?
Yes, yes, definitely. If you're talking about any, like, say, let's say I'm doing the individual session only. If I'm talking about anxious or avoidant person here, in both of them comes their attachment style is developed because of trauma. So there is something called trauma tree. If you search it online, you'll find a trauma tree. It gives you question and it leaves you a block where you can ask them to answer such kind of questions. Once they answer all of the questions, you can realize where the trauma is actually rooted from. So once you understand it, you can also ask them to write about their feelings, about how they felt when their partner was not close to them, how they felt when the partner avoided them, or how it feels for them when they are isolating themselves. So when they write about all those things in CBT, most of us have already might have heard about it, cognitive restructuring. So you can restructure your thoughts from the current issue, but I will definitely say it is not going to happen in one session. So it is all about creating them a space where you form a rapport, where you create a secure space so they can feel, they can open up. So this is a step-by-step process, but cognitive restructuring is something that will really help them to come back to, this one particular thing as couple counseling before going for before going for it, talking in individual sessions. This is something we can do.
Okay, okay. All right. Thank you so much, Neha. You have been so helpful in making us understand about a relationship and therapy better. We are slightly over time, but folks, as promised, here are Neha's details. I have dropped them in. It has her email ID and also her Instagram ID, so that you can follow her and ask for more, questions or learnings. And if you want to stay updated about any other upcoming webinars by Zen Circle and Zensible, please join our WhatsApp chat group, and we will keep you posted about upcoming webinars. So you have been a great, very interactive audience. Thank you so much for your thought-provoking questions, and we will see you on the next webinar. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me. It was really great talking about all these issues. I think it is also a very refreshing space for me to talk about outside therapy. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thanks, Neha. Have a good evening, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.